If you woke up this morning and didn't get your Steve Porter fix, now's your chance. Coming up next on Carolina People. Good morning and happy 4th of July. This morning we're at the regional headquarters for Tidelands Bank on the corner of Professional Drive and Grissom Parkway. We're focused on TV, radio, and print. And we're visiting with a man who knows a little bit about, or a lot about, all three of them. Steve Porter. Good morning, Steve.
Yeah, good morning.
Thank you so much for coming in. Happy 4th. I hope you got some big plans today.
Yeah, we're going to have a blast.
Of course, normally you're up at 4 or 5. You're going to have a blast. I got it. I'm a little slow. I'm in the middle of the next sentence before I figure that joke out. Yeah, of course, being here at Tidelands Bank, which is not open today, so viewers don't come in to Tidelands today. This is the one day you don't want to come in. But, of course, you're normally on the radio in the mornings. It's a treat for us to be able to get you in on a morning where you're not actually on the radio.
Yeah. It's a day off in the middle of the week is something it's unheard of in radio generally, even if it is Christmas or any other day. But our company now, the radio station folks, want us all to take the holidays.
Next
this is
media.
A company policy. Next media.
That's good.
And I've never worked for a company at the networks or anywhere else where holidays were considered anything other than a normal work day. This is really very different.
And you have worked with some of the biggest, some of the best. When we think about companies like General Electric or CBS, Westinghouse or otherwise, you have been with some biggies there.
Well, yeah, my first big association was with Westinghouse. I had been working, obviously, with smaller companies as I was getting up through the business, but I was with Westinghouse in Philadelphia, and then went to CBS in New York, and then went over to NBC, where I was for almost 20 years. And then after I left NBC, because of I had to leave because of a personal thing we could talk about if you want to. But then on a kind of a part-time basis, working hours I wanted, I helped USA Today start their Sky Radio program.
Is that right?
And I was the original anchor and one of the initiators of the Associated Press ANR service, which is an all-news radio national program. I helped them get going, and some other things that I could work, in my own time. My own schedule. Whereas when I was working with NBC at the White House, you had to be there every day, and you had to travel a lot and be away a lot, and I couldn't do that anymore. So fortunately, the minute I left NBC, the phone rang, and I had more to do than I knew what to do with.
And then AP, and of course, Gannett's done such a tremendous job with USA Today. Think about the launching of that, and the guys at Newhart or New Al or somebody there. Of course, to think about the commitment they made. A long time ago there out of Arlington or Alexandria, wherever Gannett's headquarters.
It's right across the river in the tall building. We were on the top floor, and you could literally look out the window and see the airliners coming into what now is Reagan Airport below the top of the building.
No.
You're literally looking down on the aircraft as they went down the river and landed.
And still the same way. Still happening that.
Yeah, and we worry about tall buildings around here and our airport. Come on.
That's amazing, Steve. One thing I hadn't thought about until I was reviewing some stuff, you were with us kind enough to come back when we were at the Fox 43 studio 3 or 4 years ago. And, of course, to see that you were you've been a pilot for many years.
Yeah, it was one of those things where when I first got into the business, it's kind of ironic in a way, I always wanted to fly, okay? And when I was about to get drafted into the Army, during the Vietnam War, I went and got my physical, and they took a look at me, and I had been injured in high school. And they said, well, we don't want you. You couldn't even get through basic training. Get out of here. And it was some sergeant who used very long 4-letter words and told me to get out. Well, they obviously didn't want me. And he asked me, he said, what do you think you're going to do in the service? I said, well, I was going to join the Air Force because I want to learn to fly and all that. He says, you're not going anywhere. Get out of here, So I left, but I still wanted to fly. And a lot of the guys that I was in school with were pilots and became pilots. And
Is that
a lot
right?
of them went
In
to
the Air
Vietnam.
Force?
Yeah, a lot of them went to Vietnam. And so I landed in San Antonio when I was, how old was I? 23 years old.
Early 20s.
Yeah, and working for a television station there, anchoring a morning news program, 2 hours long. But you had Randolph Air Force Base, Lackland Air Force Base, Kelly, Brooke Army Medical Center, the Burn Clinic, all of these bases, all right there in San Antonio.
Right.
And so I kind of became friends with a bunch of guys out at Randolph. In fact, my wife became very good friends with the wife of the master sergeant who ran the NCO club. Mm-hmm. We had it made. I mean, every Friday night they had the best entertainment, the best food, the whole night. But then I got to fly just about everything that flew in and out of there. Not myself, so to speak, but I did a lot of filming, and the Air Force came to me at one point because they knew I had been doing this, and they asked if I would help them put together a training film for the Vietnamese that they were training there on the old T-28s. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So in a way, I was kind of semi in the service there for a while. I had a blast, and those little Vietnamese guys trying to learn to fly those things. I mean, they didn't always hit the ground the way they were supposed to. But I learned a lot, had a lot of fun, and I think I flew just about every kind of aircraft that's ever landed at Randolph, and that's where I really got the bug.
Right.
And then when I moved from there back to Philly, and then went on to New York, I thought, well, I'm going to go ahead and pursue this. Oh, by the way, my very first flying lesson was given to me by, and his name skips my mind, and if he's watching this program, I'm sorry. I've only met him one time, and that's when he took me up on that first flight off of Tampa Airport.
It was there?
The old airport out on the island. And I think it was an old Jenny. And I took that first lesson, but then I couldn't go on anymore after that. He lives in Conway.
Oh, come on.
Oh, yes, and he writes a lot of letters to editors, so look out.
Oh, good. Yeah. Name slipping. I love it. That's right. He's going to write in and say, how could Porter forget my freaking name? I took him up the first time. His virgin experience.
That's right. I've never seen him since then. But I know he's out there. And,
right.
But then when I moved into a neighborhood in Jersey, in Morristown, New Jersey, about half my neighbors were airline pilots.
No.
For the old Eastern Airlines,
Sure,
and they had the chief DCA pilot for Delta, and they all belonged to a group with a whole bunch of Bell Labs people. And most of them were Germans, so it was kind of like being in the Luftwaffe. But that's where I got my training. With a wonderful instructor out of LaGuardia. He was the line chief for TWA, the old TWA.
Right.
And I just went straight on through all the way. I went through the standard private license, and then through instruments and retractable and all the rest of it.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Full-fledged?
Full-fledged, yeah. And then we flew for many years with my family all over. Mm-hmm. Never really had any close calls.
Would you all even fly down here when you were vacationing in Myrtle Beach?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, in fact, I would get off work sometimes late at night, go grab the family, go out to the airport, and just tromp it and come down here. We'd be down here in about 3.5 hours.
Is that right?
Yeah, we really enjoyed it.
That's amazing. You think about that, getting the bug there. Of course, part of the real bug, as you highlight, the recruiter saying, you're not going to fly.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be a great encouragement in and of itself to get out there and get your license. That's right, and get all your approvals. So it was in Tampa. Wasn't it in Tampa where you became a news director at a very early age?
Yeah, well, of course, I got my schooling at the University of Miami, and then I came back to Tampa because I had been there before I went to Miami. And became the news director there at, 20 years old, I guess, right out of college. And that was right about the time of the Cuban Missile Crisis. And so that was when Tampa just came apart at the seams. I mean, there were soldiers all over the place and everything. And the general manager said, Steve, are you going to stay here if the missiles start flying? Of course, that was the headquarters of what then was the Southern Command.
Is that right there in Tampa? Yeah.
It's now the Central Command. It's the big headquarters. In fact, those are That's the base through which all of our activity in Iraq is handled.
Even now?
That was Schwarzkopf's headquarters, and his replacement is there.
Huh.
And of course, they had an awful lot of activity there. But during that missile crisis, it was hilarious. And the general manager said to me, "Are you going to stay here when the missiles start falling on this town?" And I said, "No."
I think I've been to Austin, yeah.
My wife had already packed the back of the car with canned goods and everything else, and we were going to leave. You know, I figured I'm a reporter up to a certain point.
Right.
But you can't do very well when you're dead. So I thought it was time to leave.
Yeah.
Standing under missiles is a little different than doing combat. You don't have much of a chance.
Oh, yeah, sure.
So, but anyway, that was that. By the way, I left Tampa. John F. Kennedy came to Tampa to visit. Mm-hmm. I think it was his only visit in November, about November 16th or 17th. Of that year, 1964, as I recall. Mm-hmm. Or was it 63? 63.
Early 60s. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. 2 days, he went from Tampa to Dallas. That's where he was killed. That's where he was shot, 2 days later. And it was my first chance to see this very vibrant young president, well-tanned and everything. I was really impressed with him.
Oh, yeah.
And NBC Radio, we were their affiliate, kind of depended on me to feed all the information and the reports to them in New York. Right. So it was my first shot at any kind of network. And then 2 days later, John F. Kennedy gets shot. And it was just unbelievable.
And you quickly, that's what took you out to Austin, or out to Texas? Or,
no, I was in the process, even at that time, of being hired in San Antonio. Uh-huh. And I left Tampa about a week later, went to San Antonio, and started to anchor a program there. And then ABC asked us, our television station, which was ABC, to do their work covering the Johnson Ranch when he was there, because he was now president.
Sure.
And I would go up there with a camera guy, and we'd play network, you know, because ABC News at that time, this is 1963, 64, they didn't have a news department to speak of.
Right.
And so we did their work for them. And so then I got to, that was my first experience with White House activity. Mm-hmm. And back then they had what they called the Signal Corps. Today everything is very fancy. It's called the White House Communications Agency, or they got fancy this and fancy that equipment. But back in those days it was basically phone lines.
Right.
And it was awful,
Pure down and dirty.
That was really down and dirty, especially out there on that ranch of his. And
this is on LBJ's
LBJ Ranch, yeah.
I think you'd written in a piece in the Herald one time about experiences out there. Or was it with John Connolly? Was that the same? Well, it was a different location.
Yeah. See, John Connolly and Lyndon Johnson were close friends. In fact, Lyndon Johnson was the best man at John Connolly's wedding. To I think her name was Hemi. I can't think of her name. Connolly. They got married in Sam Foer's house in Floresville, Texas, which is about 100 miles south of San Antonio, about halfway down to the Mexican border. And John Connolly had a ranch, and his product on that ranch was cattle grass, high-quality grass. He had his own landing strip in his backyard, just like Lyndon Johnson.
Oh, yeah.
It was like this was the thing you had in Texas, a landing strip in your backyard.